When we open up our Bibles to chapter 8, verse 56, we read there, it says, "Blessed be the Lord God who has given rest to his people, Israel, according to all that he promised. There has not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised through his servant Moses." Not one word did God fail in. What he promised Moses, he brought it to pass. But when we begin to meditate on that word promise, it comes from the word daubar. Daubar, what does that exactly mean? Well, it means to speak, it means to declare, it means to promise, also it means to converse or commune. We need to understand that when God spoke a promise to Moses, when God met with Moses, Moses did respond to God, right? God spoke and then Moses spoke back to God. A promise that God speaks over your life, we need to understand, if you want to bring it to fulfillment, if you want to see it come to pass, there is something from your end as well that is needed. That is daubar from your end, communion with God from your end. We see when God spoke over Moses' life and picked up Moses did go and meet Pharaoh. But every time he failed, every time he faced a problem, he came back to God and daubared with God. That means spoke to God, communed with God, and God sent him back with a promise. God sent him back with the solution. Why? Because God had given him the promise, and God also gave him the way to see that the promise was fulfilled. You and I, when God gives us a promise, when God daubars us, God speaks over us, we need to understand that we need to speak back with God. We need to commune with God, because it's a matter of fact that we will always face obstacles to see the promise come to pass. And every time you face a situation, you need to go back to God. You need to go back and speak with him, because then he will direct you on how to overcome the situation. When you look into the life of Joshua also received the promise from God, but Joshua also had communion with God. He went back to God. Every time he faced a situation, he would go back to God and talk to God about it, and God would give him a solution. And that's how Joshua saw the daubar, the promise of God, come to pass. You want to see that come to pass, the promises of God? You need to commune with God. You need to also daubar, speak with God. We see the 12 spies when they went out to spy the land. 2 of them who were daubar with God. That means they were speaking with God. They had communed with God. They knew that God spoke the promise, he will bring it to pass. He will help them. But 10 of them, instead of remembering the promise, instead of speaking to God about the situation, what they did is they began to look at the problem and magnify it. They did not speak with God. They did not commune with God. They did not daubar with God. I want to encourage you right now, as you have entered into this new year, I want to encourage you, just as God has daubared with you, just as God has promised you, just as God has spoken over you, you too need to commune with God. Every time you face a situation, remind yourself, God has promised he will bring it to pass. But not just there. Don't just remind yourself of the promise. You also need to commune with God, because he will direct you on how to bring the promise to fulfillment, how to bring it to pass. Come on. God, when he promises, he will not see that even one word will not fail. He will bring it to pass. But you need to also speak to God. Just as God is speaking to you, you need to speak to him to direct your path. Because his daubar, his promise that he has spoken, he will definitely bring it to pass. God bless you.